As you know, on this channel, we like to focus on our commonalities, our mutualities with everyone else, rather than the divisiveness and the differences between us personally, individually. And what do we have more fundamentally in common with everyone on earth than the search for liberty, for freedom? We all want to be free. We all want to live the way that we would like to live. And of course, we differ in what liberty might be or how we might be able to attain it. But let's not go that far. For this video, let's not again go into the differences, into where we separate and differentiate ourselves from each other. Let's stick to the basic, universal, fundamental fact that what we are all after is freedom, or rather the avoidance of its opposite. And in many ways, of course, the opposite of freedom is slavery. And we are, of course, often rightfully so, very fixated on the physical slavery in terms of, actual chain and shackles applied to a body. But that's only one form of slavery. And in fact, one might argue it's the least harmful of them all. Not because it's not bad, as we all know it is, but because those other forms are even worse. Slavery of the mind, to be chained and shackled in your mind to your desires, to your fears, to your ambition, to your struggle, to your identity, which others might have imposed, your ambition might have imposed, society might have imposed on you. It doesn't get worse than that, because in that slavery, even a free body is shackled. Even a body, which is the situation we find ourselves in most of the world, most people, is that we are free on paper. We are free bodily. No one owns us. But really they do. And that sort of ownership doesn't even need shackles, physical shackles. That's why it's so much more potent and so much more controlling and so much more spirit breaking, if you will. But the root of that worst of all slaveries is within us. And since philosophy tells us, is really primarily concerned with how to free ourselves of those shackles of the mind, to the degree that even those brave philosophers, or technically people who were not even philosophers but who understood this, when they found themselves in shackles even, that they feel free, or they were able to accept it and to thrive. There is even an anecdote, I'm not sure if it was Diogenes, but one of those names, who in fact was taken in as sort of a slave by pirates, I believe. So he had to, he was under their constant supervision. He was in control. He was being controlled by them. He was on a ship, going wherever they went and eating only what they gave him. But yet it is said of him that he would lecture the pirates. He would lecture his captors. He would say, "You fool, you're doing this wrong. You don't know how to live. You'll never be happy. You'll always be miserable the way you are now." Because he was free in the mind. He was not a captive. He did not recognize that authority. He said, "You can chain my body, but you cannot shackle me." And that's just one of the many historical examples of what we are after and what is proven to be not only possible, but attainable, which is that highest of all freedoms, which is that opposite of the highest of all slaveries, of all captivity. Freedom of the spirit, freedom of the mind, whatever you want to call it. The freedom that physical shackles cannot shackle. That's the kind of freedom we're after. That's the kind of freedom that our ancient Greek philosopher friends tell us about. And of course, so many others in so many different traditions and religions also. So how can we attain that? What is the path to that? As we always prove time after time again on this channel, once the mind is introduced to the conflict that it bears within itself, unknowingly of course, it immediately drops it. As soon as we become aware of a contradiction, of a conflict within us, in our thinking, in our beliefs, in our opinions, once we truly become aware of it, we drop it. It's automatic. It's effortless. It's because we didn't know about this contradiction. It's because we thought we were making sense that we engaged in that behavior and that belief in the first place. But we are of reason, as humans, our nature, as the Stoics say, to live according to nature. What they mean is to live according to the human nature. And the human nature is reason. It is that which is unique about us in the entire animal kingdom. To that degree, anyway. And so, just like with everything else, we will become free as soon as we become aware of the conflict, of the mess, of the unreasonable nature of our beliefs. And when it comes to freedom, we have to realize the true nature of slavery. What is truly wrong? What is truly horrific? What is the core principle that makes slavery slavery? It is not the hard work involved. Because there are many people who do that work willingly, for themselves, for their family, for their nation, for humanity. They work all day, every day, relentlessly. They toil. Sometimes their body breaks down. They maybe die from it, but they want to do that. So clearly the toiling, the working, the striving, that burden of work is not what makes a slave a slave. And it's not even to be under the control of others. That is the defining principle of slavery. Because soldiers take orders. We take orders, even as civilians, of people who we know for a fact know better and whom we trust, who we see as wise, even if we don't understand their reasoning. We trust. And even if we don't like them, that is also not a part of slavery. You don't need to like the person that you're taking orders from to do it willingly and to do it sensibly and to do it reasonably and to do it for a right reason. So that too is not the defining principle of slavery. What is it then? Is it not this, that the slave holder, and again, this is any kind of slavery, not just the physical, historical slavery that we had in almost every country. It's that the slave holder thinks themselves to be better than the slave, than the person in captivity. That is the defining definition of slavery. And to think oneself better than some other person is something that goes on everywhere, every day. That cannot be ended with any law. It is not visible. It is sometimes not even perceivable, but it is there. Whenever we feel that someone else is better than us, whether that is us projecting on them or them really doing those actions that make us feel that way, we are going over to captivity. We are letting others shackle us. And we're doing this because we're seeing differences, because we have a mind that is trained to do that, to constantly compare and contrast, and to always yearn for what it perceives to be better, and to emulate the person who seems to have these things, and to desire those things, and to do whatever that person says in order to attain whatever the object of desire is. This could be a certain amount of knowledge, it could be influence, it could be material, anything. Isn't that what we do? Isn't that the root of all our comparing and contrasting? And isn't that what pushes us into slavery? And vice versa. Because we have attained a certain amount of something, again, material or not, anything, career, money, knowledge, skill, we go around constantly judging others and thinking that because of those things that we've attained, whatever they might be, that we are, at least to some degree, better than someone else. It's so minute sometimes, even when we go to a restaurant. And what do? We call the people who bring us our food, who take our orders, we call them orders first of all, we call them servers. Some call them waiters and waitresses, but it's really not much different. And I'm not saying the word is problematic or anything. It's just, as always, language is a bit of an indicator of what goes on in the collective mind, so to speak. And we get into that mode, we get into that mindset of, yeah, for the time that I sit here, for the time that I am a paying customer, I expect certain things that I don't expect other times. I expect someone to speak properly to me, to be very kind. And if not, if they don't do that, or if I perceive that they're not quite attentive to me enough, then I feel that I am lacking something that I am owed, that this person is disrespecting me. And it's purely based on my status as a customer versus the server. And this is the mindset that we need to be aware of at all times, that is constantly attacking us. And I do mean it is attacking us on all sides, all the time. And it will creep in if we don't pay attention. And we will become a slave or a slave holder. There's no difference in the injustice of being an actual physical slave holder and to be, in today's world, in the United States, going to a restaurant and looking at another person in that way. There's no difference. In terms of the offense that we're doing to our own soul, to our own understanding, to our own reason, there's no difference because it's the same mentality. The level and degree of offense does not make the offense itself any less. And like I said, we are harming ourselves because we're not responsible, really, truly, we're not responsible of the feelings of others. That's their domain. But we are, of course, responsible of our actions still. Just because we're not responsible for what emotions and thoughts they might cause in other people, we are still 100% responsible of the correctness of our actions, of not offending that highest mind within us. It all comes back to us. We immediately suffer the consequences of acting that way. And there's nothing we can do about that once it's done, once we are in that mindset. We need to be constantly on guard. Like I said, that's a minute example. It's so small. But that doesn't make it less important. In fact, it makes it more important. It shows you that these traps are everywhere. And as soon as you fall into the trap, it's not contained to that low level of example, like in a restaurant. It's not contained to that. It will spread throughout all your relations, throughout your mind, throughout all your beliefs. You go around, you see an example of this slaveholder and or slave mentality everywhere. People go shopping and they leave their shopping cart right in some empty parking spot because they say, oh, I come here all the time, I shop so much, I give these people so much money, the least they can do is pick up after me. Or they'll spill something and just keep walking. It's everywhere. And of course, I keep talking about smaller daily examples to show how it is everywhere, but that doesn't mean at all that it's constricted to that. It goes all the way to the top. It goes all the way to marriages. It goes all the way to workplaces. It goes all the way to the leadership of a nation. To look at a certain part of their own constituents, so to speak, their own voters, even if they didn't vote for them, the citizens of that country, to be lesser because they have a certain background, because they're affiliated with a certain political party, or again, because they didn't vote for them. It goes all the way to the top, and it goes all the way to the bottom, and it's found in every single thing in between. And in fact, not only can we do this to others and others can do it to us, we do it to ourselves. We constantly look down upon ourselves, not only other people. And we become both slave and slaveholder. And that conflict, that inner turmoil, that nonsensical relationship is not only the opposite of freedom, but it's also the opposite of peace. And that's why so many people are in that mess of constantly oscillating almost between looking down on themselves and to make themselves feel better, feel more worthy, feel more the higher status, because ego is all about status. And the slaveholder is one that is consumed of ego. And the willing slave, the one that makes himself a slave of desires and other people's opinions, is also of the ego. Because without ego, there is no separation. Without ego, there's no comparison. Without ego, even if I'm a slave, I would not know about it. I would not think about myself that much. I would not rank myself that much. But the slave of desires, of opinions, of the affirmations of others, and all outside external objects of desire, whatever they might be, is also just as much of the ego. And to have that combination going on, which most of us do most of our lives, I have to say, it seems, is our ruin. And it's not our fault that we are this way, but it is our responsibility to come out of it. And that's what philosophy promises. That's what the love of wisdom promises and delivers, I have to say, is that freedom and the peace that it brings. And after that, all that we do is done with respect for others and for ourselves, is done with love for others and ourselves. Sorry, I'm just seeing an eagle soar. It's amazing. And without love, there's nothing we can do for ourselves and for others. So we first have to go within ourselves, leave the outside slaves and the slaveholders and this whole mess of a system, and go within ourselves and first learn to respect and love ourselves. And once we do that, We would never wish to do that on anyone else. We will become incapable of doing that, in fact. It won't even be this constant temptation, actually, that people have to look down upon others and to feel better thereby about themselves. It won't even be an option. It won't even be a thought. It won't even be a possibility, a capability. And that's what is attained not only through philosophy, but through philosophy as a way of life. That which we're constantly talking about on this channel, that it needs to be a practice, a daily practice, a mode of living. That's the only way out of the slavery, because the slavery of the mind, which lurks everywhere, as we just talked about, is constantly attacking us every day, everywhere. It doesn't stop. So if we stop our practice of philosophy, I'm not saying this is a 24/7 constant rigidity and that otherwise we're going to fall into those traps regardless. No, of course not. But it's an overall tendency. Once we cultivate that overall tendency within us and that understanding and that wish, of course, to be free, then we will have it. And even though those constant attacks will, of course, continue, it will be pretty much effortless to resist them as long as there is awareness. And so this is your reminder. I can say it, but I can't make you stick to that practice or start the practice even. I can only make you aware as I have been made aware, and I'm just passing that on. But what you do from there is, of course, your responsibility and only under your control. I cannot force you. No one can force you. I cannot force myself. It's the mind, it's that understanding that once it clicks, you see how nonsensical everything else is. You see how destructive and evil, of course, slavery is. But again, not just the physical one. It comes from the mind. It manifested itself historically, physically, but it first must exist in the mind. There is no physical slavery without the intent of it within people, inside of people. Acts come from beliefs. And to focus only on the act is to miss the point. One can outlaw physical slavery, but one cannot outlaw the spiritual world and the intellectual. That is our work, it is our domain. And again, it's not a selfless action, it's a completely selfish action to stop being a slave and a slave holder. It's good for us, it brings us freedom and peace. The slaveholder is not free. They can have, again, historically going back, they can have hundreds of slaves. And they can be rich and powerful. They're not free. They're consumed by that worldview of looking at others as lessers or as equals or as stationed above them. It's a constant fight. There's no single person in the world, no matter how powerful, how wealthy, how respected even, if they have this mindset, they will never ever be able to have enough. I'm not saying because of their shortcomings and their power and their wealth. No, you could give them every single thing in the universe, and they will still ask for one more and beat themselves up over it and beat others up physically and mentally. It will never be enough. It's a constant torment and turmoil, which there's no way out of other than through the mind. And so, like I said, this is your reminder. This is your push. All you have to do for this is to become aware of it. There is no more work after that. It's another lie of the ego, of the false self, whatever you want to call it, to say, oh, it's going to be so much work. You're going to have to give up everything. Not that it wouldn't be worth it, by the way, to give up everything to attain peace and freedom, but no, it's all about awareness. As soon as that feeling comes up of feeling inadequate, of being a slave, or of thinking of someone else as inadequate, of lesser in any way. As soon as either one of these feelings come up, become aware of it and say, I will not do a single thing that it tells me to do. It wants me to perceive this action as disrespect. Someone lesser than me talking to me in this way, I cannot allow that. That's what it wants me to do. So I will do the opposite. I will allow it. Even if it is real, honest, intent disrespect, I will let it slide. I will turn the other cheek. Because what does it do to me? It doesn't lessen me. If I am good, it cannot make me less good. If I am honest, it cannot make me less honest. If I am loving, it cannot make me less honest. The actions and even opinions and beliefs of others. And so why react? And by the way, any reaction that comes from the false self, any reaction that comes from this mentality of comparing others with others, is an overreaction. Always. It's never just a reaction. It's an overreaction. How dare you talk to me this way? How dare you put my plate down in that way? How dare you spill? How dare you not pay attention to me? All of these things are overreactions, not just reactions. And as soon as I become aware of an overreaction, what happens? I stop doing it. And so we are not better than anyone else, because they are not better than us. No matter what they think, no matter what we think. As you go through your life, as you go through your day, your daily routine, regular, sometimes even boring day, watch out for these traps. They are everywhere. And all of our turmoil, or rather, all of that feeling of not being free, of not being able to live the way we would like to, ideally, and that feeling of non-peace, a state of non-peace, comes from this, of falling into dozens of little traps and a few big ones throughout our day, week, month, year. Become aware, and it will stop.